Welcome to Storytime. Get ready. Navigate for quick wisdom of countless stories. Let's dive into the world of knowledge together and explore. Once upon a time, in a small, cozy village nestled between rolling hills and a shimmering lake, there lived a little tailor named Max. Max wasn't just any tailor. He was the best in the land, or so he liked to tell anyone who'd listen. His sewing shop, though modest, was always filled with vibrant fabrics, colorful threads, and the smell of fresh lavender, which Max insisted kept the moths away, though it really just made the place smell nicer. Max was a small man with a big ego. He had a pointy nose, twinkling eyes, and a curly mustache that he waxed daily. Despite his size, he believed himself to be destined for greatness, though no one else seemed to notice. His neighbors were fond of him but often rolled their eyes at his grandiose tales of heroism. Max, on the other hand, was convinced that one day the world would recognize his talents. One fine morning, as Max was working on a particularly tricky patch for old Mrs. Beasley's favorite quilt, his stomach let out a loud growl. "Ah, breakfast time," he declared, setting down his needle. He reached into his cupboard and pulled out a loaf of bread, some cheese, and a jar of strawberry jam. As he spread the jam onto the bread, he noticed a group of flies buzzing around his breakfast. "How dare you, intruders!" Max exclaimed, grabbing a piece of cloth and rolling it up like a whip. The flies, oblivious to Max's wrath, continued their feast. With a dramatic flick of his wrist, Max swatted at the flies with all his might. To his surprise, when the cloth fell, not one, not two, but 7 flies lay dead on the table. Max stared at the fallen flies, his eyes widening. 7 at one blow," he murmured. Suddenly an idea took root in his mind. Who needed to know they were flies? 7 at one blow could mean anything. Warriors, giants, dragons. Max quickly set to work, fashioning himself a bold, colorful belt. In big, golden letters, he embroidered the words 7 at one blow. He tied the belt around his waist and admired himself in the mirror. "The world must know of my great feat," he declared. And with that, he packed a small bag, put on his best hat, and set off to seek his fortune. As Max wandered out of his village, he hummed a little tune, occasionally glancing down at his belt with a smug grin. The road was long, but Max didn't mind. He was too busy imagining the adventures that awaited him. After several hours of walking, Max came across a tall mountain. At the top was a castle, its tower stretching toward the sky. Max's curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to investigate. As he climbed, he noticed something peculiar. A huge boulder was sitting in the middle of the path, as if it had been placed there deliberately. Max, always one for a challenge, approached the boulder. "A mere rock cannot stop me," he boasted. But as he got closer, he realized this was no ordinary boulder. It was moving. The ground shook as the boulder shifted, and Max soon found himself staring up at a giant. The giant was massive, with arms like tree trunks and a belly that could rival a hill. He was scratching his head and mumbling to himself, clearly puzzled by something. Max, never one to miss an opportunity, puffed out his chest and approached the giant. "Greetings, good giant," Max called out. "I am Max, the tailor who has defeated 7 at one blow." The giant looked down, raising a bushy eyebrow. "7 at one blow, you say?" he rumbled, his voice like thunder. "You must be a great warrior." "Indeed I am," Max replied, trying to keep his knees from shaking. "I've come to challenge anyone who dares to stand in my way." The giant pondered this for a moment, then grinned, showing a row of teeth the size of gravestones. "Very well, little man. Let's see what you're made of." He picked up a stone and squeezed it in his massive hand until it crumbled into dust. Max gulped but kept his composure. He quickly reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of cheese. He held it up for the giant to see, then squeezed it in his hand until the cheese oozed between his fingers. "Behold!" Max shouted. "I can squeeze blood from a stone." The giant's eyes widened in surprise. "Impressive," he said, though he looked slightly confused. "But can you throw as far as I can?" He picked up a stone and hurled it over the mountain, where it disappeared from sight. Max thought fast. He rummaged through his bag and pulled out a bird egg. With a quick motion, he flung it into the air, where it soared high before disappearing behind the mountain. "There," Max said confidently. "My stone will fly forever and never return." The giant scratched his head again, clearly baffled. "You're a strange one," he muttered. "But you've earned my respect. Come, let us be friends." Max, relieved, agreed. The giant led him to his castle, where they feasted on roasted boar and honey cakes. The giant told Max stories of the mountains, and Max regaled the giant with tales of his tailoring adventures, though heavily embellished, of course. The next morning, as Max prepared to leave, the giant handed him a special gift. A pouch filled with gold coins. "You've earned this, brave tailor," the giant said. "May your adventures bring you even more glory." Max thanked the giant and continued on his journey, the pouch of gold jingling at his side. As he walked, he marveled at his own cleverness. 7 at one blow indeed, he chuckled. After several more days of travel, Max reached a bustling city. The city was abuzz with excitement. Word had spread that the king was seeking a hero to rid the land of 2 troublesome giants who had been terrorizing the countryside. Max, never one to shy away from a chance to prove himself, and perhaps gain a little more gold, decided this was his moment. He marched straight to the royal palace and requested an audience with the king. The king, an elderly man with a flowing beard and a crown that seemed a tad too big for his head, eyed Max with skepticism. "So you claim to have defeated 7 at one blow?" the king asked, stroking his beard. "Indeed, your majesty," Max replied, flashing his belt, "and I am ready to rid your kingdom of these giants." The king considered this. He had heard many boastful claims before, but there was something about this little tailor that intrigued him. Perhaps it was the way Max's mustache curled with confidence, or perhaps it was the gleam in his eye. Either way, the king decided to give him a chance. "Very well," the king said. "If you can defeat these giants, I shall reward you with half my kingdom and my daughter's hand in marriage." Max's eyes sparkled at the thought of becoming a prince, and the prospect of a royal tailor shop wasn't too bad either. "You have a deal, your majesty," he declared. The king's advisors, who had been listening in, looked at each other with raised eyebrows. They had their doubts about this little tailor, but the king's word was law. So they provided Max with a horse, a sword, which was almost as big as he was, and a map to the giant's lair. Max set off, feeling more confident than ever. As he neared the lair, however, his confidence began to wane. The ground shook with each step the giants took, and their roars echoed through the mountains. Max quickly realized that his usual tricks might not work this time. But Max was nothing if not resourceful. He knew that fighting the giants head-on would be foolish, so he devised a cunning plan. He sneaked into the giant's lair at night while they were fast asleep. The lair was a dark, damp cave filled with bones and broken weapons. The giants, 2 fearsome brutes with wild hair and beards like tangled bushes, lay snoring loudly. Max carefully climbed onto the chest of the first giant and tied a rope around his neck. Then he did the same to the second giant. He ran the rope outside the cave around a tree and tied it tight. Then he found a nearby boulder and gave it a good push, sending it rolling down the hill and crashing into the cave. The giants awoke with a start, each thinking the other had attacked him. They roared in anger and began fighting each other, their immense strength causing the cave to tremble. Max watched from a safe distance, grinning as the giants' fight escalated. Eventually, in their fury, they ended up knocking each other out cold. Max, ever the opportunist, quickly ran back to the cave and tied the giants together with the rope. Then he climbed atop a rock and, with a flourish, unfurled his belt. "Behold," he shouted. "I am Max, the tailor who defeated 7 at one blow. And now I have vanquished you both." The giants, dazed and confused, could barely comprehend what had happened. They struggled against the ropes but found themselves hopelessly entangled. Max marched triumphantly back to the palace, where he was greeted as a hero. The king, true to his word, offered Max half his kingdom and his daughter's hand in marriage. The princess, a clever and kind-hearted woman, was intrigued by Max's quick wit and agreed to the match. And so Max the tailor became Prince Max, ruler of half the kingdom. But despite his newfound power, he never gave up his tailoring. In fact, he became known as the Prince of Patches, beloved for his skill with a needle and thread. Max ruled wisely, always with a twinkle in his eye and a clever plan up his sleeve. And though he never had to face giants again, he never stopped telling the tale of how he had defeated 7 at one blow. And the giants, of course, who were, in truth, no match for a tailor with a sharp mind and a sharper needle. And so the little tailor who dared to dream big lived happily ever after, in a kingdom where wit and humor were just as valuable as strength and size. Thanks for tuning in. For more enlightening content and a detailed summary, visit www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. Let's inspire and empower each other. Subscribe to our channel and share our videos with your friends and family.